now.
All right, meeting is now live.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Hello, everyone. My name is Will Shorter, and I am the chair of the Anne Arundel County Public Library Board of Trustees. It is August 4th, 2021. It is 1:05 p.m. And with a quorum of the board being present, I now officially bring to order this emergency board meeting of the trustees. Our first action item is approval of the agenda. I would like to add one little friendly amendment to that, and that is just a brief chair's remark at the beginning after we approve the agenda. Then we will go into the mask and vaccine policy discussion and approval. With that, and that friendly amendment I mentioned, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I second.
With all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries. The agenda has been approved. And going on to the chair's report, I just really want to thank everyone for rearranging work and family schedules to be here at the last minute. As we all know, watching the news and the world around us, the Delta variant has really taken hold and is really concerning for numerous reasons from a public health perspective. And that brings us today as we continue to combat this ongoing pandemic. I would like to thank again all of you guys for coming on short notice. The executive leadership team led by Skip, who has put in a lot of work over the weekend to make sure that we can get to a place where our staff is safe, and also Anne Arundel County Public Health Officer Dr. Nilesh Kalyanaraman, who is here and who will be able to answer any questions as it relates to the health policy side of this or the health reason for it, so we have accurate context. Also, I just wanted to provide some context around, I know there was a lot of emails going out lately and there was some confusion. Today was the emergency board meeting because we have to consider the policy. And also, I know some people received emails about committee meetings coming up. There's no committee meetings in August formally. There are dates set up for the committee chairs and vice chairs to meet with their ELT representatives and Skip and I to discuss a work plan and to go over roles and responsibilities for the year so we can start planning out the year strategically. And I just wanted to provide any context. Does anyone have any questions or concerns regarding that before we move to the next part? Good. So with that, I will turn it over to Skip, who will provide an overview of where we're at in our pandemic recovery efforts and our ongoing efforts to make sure that we're doing our part to keep our staff safe.
Okay, thank you, Will. And hello, trustees. It's good to see you here today. I appreciate you getting together on such short notice. I had a call Saturday, and then I had several calls on Sunday to kind of plan for the county's announcement Monday morning, which I attended when Stuart Pittman had his press conference at 10 a.m. And essentially, the county made its decision for county employees and county buildings. When they made a decision to require masks of all staff and customers in the county buildings, that decision applies to us directly. And so we are not contesting that, and it is something we are doing. So as of tomorrow, in all of our libraries, people will have to wear masks, and we had a couple of days here to get ready for this. I let staff know on Monday that this was coming about, so that'll happen tomorrow. Just so everybody can have a sense of this, there's quite a bit of trepidation about going back into a mask mandate because we've done this before. It was somewhat of a nightmare to enforce. I know that when the county made its announcement Monday, Chief Administrative Officer Matt Power said that anybody who refuses to comply, we simply will politely escort them out of the building. So that's the ideal. That would be great, and that would be great if it happened that way. But people get extremely angry. They get belligerent. They get nasty. Not everybody, but when you have a few of those a day, it really takes a toll on our staff. And with the hundreds and even thousands of people who come into our libraries now, we're expecting this to be difficult. We know that the vast majority of people will comply, but it creates a very difficult situation. But so anyway, so that is going to happen starting tomorrow. In addition, the county is moving forward with requiring vaccinations, or actually it's not requiring vaccinations, and we are looking to follow on their policy, and that's what we would be voting on today. The county is going to require, starting on September the 13th, a negative COVID test result once a week for anyone who does not have a vaccine. And there are personal reasons, there are medical reasons, there are religious reasons people do not get the vaccine. But for anyone, we are trying to ensure that everybody who's just thinking, oh, maybe I'll get one, maybe I won't, that they have a strong incentive to get vaccinated. And so, so with that, we will be asking you to authorize this policy, which would require staff to show proof of vaccination, and essentially they will send their vaccine cards or a photocopy of that into the Human Resources Department. And if we don't have that, the HR department will contact those employees and make sure that they are supplying a negative test result on a weekly basis. We're handling this a little differently from the county. The county is having all the frontline supervisors ensure the compliance on the testing. And we felt, and Coven Roundtree felt, that it was going to work better in the library for the HR department to handle that centrally. We don't have 3,000 employees the way that the county does. We also have a very high vaccination rate already. We know that when we surveyed 2 months ago, 95% of the staff has been vaccinated. So it's not a lot of our staff who will be getting vaccines or getting tested, but it's it's a significant number. So with that, I can take questions, or we can hear from Dr. Kalyana Raman about kind of where things are. I think that actually might be a good thing. If I guess first, does anyone have a question at this point?
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Auld?
I think the 95% rate's pretty good. If you got 95%, in the library system.
Yeah, that's tremendous. Actually, when I mentioned it to Matt Power, he said, "Oh my gosh, that's great." So it is really good. Now, we have about 260 full-time staff, or 260, 270 in that range. We have another 100 to 150 part-time. The response was about, I believe it was 318 of our total 400 employees who completed the survey. So the actual vaccination rate might be a little bit lower if people who didn't respond to the survey have not been vaccinated in a higher percentage. But still, it's good. We were very happy to have that high percentage. That was all done anonymously. This would no longer be honor system or anonymous. We would have to know who has been vaccinated and who has not, so that we can manage the system.
So how are you going to determine whether they've been vaccinated or not vaccinated?
We're going to have them submit a copy or a scan of their vaccine card. So that'll go into the HR department.
Skip, I have a question either for you or for the head of the health department. How good is a once a week test for COVID? It seems to me that you could be tested on one day and 2 days later start coming down with COVID. Am I wrong?
So, Nilesh, do you want to respond to that?
Yep. So when we put this into, when we try to translate this testing recommendation into a frequency, we're trying to balance what makes the most sense from a public health standpoint, with also what's executable from a personnel standpoint. And so that's where we land with once a week, and you see that in a lot of institutions landing at once a week. Pretty much, when we've talked about the cycle, it takes about a couple of days after exposure for people to start developing symptoms. It's anywhere from 2 to 14 days. The average is about 5 days. We think about it in like a 5-day work week, and so it's reasonable to test once a week. We could do more frequently, 2 or 3 times a week. That's not unreasonable from a transmission standpoint, but we find that becomes very difficult to manage logistically, both for HR departments and for personnel. And the only places that are actually doing more frequently than once a week typically offer on-site testing for logistical purposes.
Okay.
Now this is, and I'll just add one more thing. This is for people without symptoms, right? So you're trying to catch before it becomes anything. If you're symptomatic, of course, you should stay home, get tested.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions?
I have a question for the doctor. Have they done any studies on those people that had the virus, whether or not how long they have the immunity or anything like that? How long the immunity lasts?
Right.
I've been hearing conflicting stories. That have lifetime immunity or whatever.
Well, when we look at the studies of people who've been exposed and have developed antibodies through exposure versus those who are developing antibodies through vaccination, the protective effect is much stronger with a vaccination. It's why we continue to recommend that even if you've been infected with COVID, you should still get vaccinated.
They also indicate, you hear a lot on the news that if you get vaccinated, it destroys your natural immunity to the virus. Is that true?
No, it is not.
Okay.
So vaccinations are a way to essentially help your body recognize a virus or bacteria. We have a lot of vaccinations, right? That we, particularly in the pediatric set, the childhood immunizations, it's a way for your body to recognize an infectious disease, and then when you get exposed to it through whatever you're doing in the course of your life, you're already ready to go. It doesn't destroy your immunity. What it does is it prepares your immune system for an infection and gets it ready to fight it off.
Okay. Based on my age, I don't know how I survived it, but I did. But the virus, I'm 80 years old now.
Well, let's get you good and vaccinated.
I must have good immunity of some sort.
Thank you. Are there any
I don't
other-
disagree with it, but
Again, thank you. Are there any other questions for Skip or Dr. Kaliada-Rahman or?
Will, would you like me to go ahead and read the policy statement?
Yes, I think that would be really good so people can understand. And also, before you do that, you mentioned staff, and also just so everyone is aware that volunteers, because they make up part of our staff as well in our library branches. I just want to make sure that we understand that as well, because they work shifts as well.
Okay, so here is a policy that we are that I'll read, and then if I think it would be good for someone to make a motion to adopt this policy, so that then we can have further discussion of it. So we're calling it the COVID-19 Mask, Vaccine, and emergency action authorization policy. The Chief Executive Officer shall adopt reasonable procedures to enforce the county executive's mandate regarding masks and vaccinations. Furthermore, the CEO is authorized and directed to make decisions on masks, vaccinations, testing, and any other aspects related to the COVID-19 pandemic and its ongoing evolution. Additionally, effective September 13th, 2021, the Chief Executive Officer shall require all library staff, including volunteers, to provide proof of full COVID-19 vaccination or providing proof of a negative COVID-19 test from any employee that is not fully vaccinated. Employees that are not vaccinated must provide a negative COVID-19 test from a health center, pharmacy, or physician on a weekly basis.
With that, I will move that we adopt the policy as recommended by Mr. Ald. Is there a second?
A second.
There's a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Eastep?
I just want to say I agree with the policy as a general point. I am fully vaccinated. I'd love it if everyone were fully vaccinated. I understand people are and do what they do for whatever reasons they do. My suggestion, and this is something I'd just like to consider. I know we've got a motion and a second on the floor. We've got a beginning date, but we don't have an end date. Can we tie when we stop requiring vaccinations or proof of a negative test to some announcement, whether it's from Dr. Kalyana or the county, to when we can say there's an end date as opposed to just leaving it open-ended? That's my only question. Thank you.
I will defer to Mr. Ald if he has a recommendation or if Dr. Kalyana believes that there's a best practice when we should ultimately rescind this policy, though, but I'll leave it to the professionals to make a recommendation for us.
So Dr. Kalyana, I would look to you. I know that the county, in announcing its own policy, just stated until further notice. So they did not give any indication of when the end time, the end of this policy might take place, or the end of this requirement for the negative tests. Do you have any suggestion for us?
So we don't have it's not meant to be in perpetuity. That said, we don't have a clear end point. I think the biggest pieces that are going to be unfolding that will determine how long that testing requirement needs to be in place are: one, full approval of vaccines; two, vaccine eligibility for children under 11 years of age. And so we still have significant portion of the population that cannot get vaccinated. So as events transpire during the fall, particularly those two approval, I guess, milestones, I think we'll be in a better position to reevaluate.
And I would just say to Jim that, and really to all trustees and all staff, that it would be my desire to end this requirement as soon as it's reasonable to end it. It's definitely not in perpetuity, and we don't want to end it prematurely, but when there's no longer a need for people to be testing, we want to end that requirement. And so we will act. I don't think that we need to state that in the motion. And I think that the way that the first paragraph of the policy is stated, it would provide the CEO with the authority to end it at the appropriate time.
That's not to point of clarification. That's not my understanding. Since this is a policy adopted by the board would have to rescind that policy.
I don't see how we pick a
Miss
date.
Jenny Lane, Miss
Yeah.
Smith, wait a minute, there's other people with hands up first. I just want to make sure we get to everyone. I will get to you. I see Miss Cruz's hand, Miss Ellis's hand, then we'll get to you, Miss Smith.
Okay.
Thank you.
My question is, will there be an incentive Additionally, for making a requirement, for instance, in my job, if you get vaccinated, there's like a $50 gift card that you receive for getting vaccinated. I'm not sure if other places are doing that, but at least the restaurant industry, that is also like an incentive. So I guess people feel like, they're also getting something in return. Is that something that we can look into, or even an option as well?
Mr. All?
Well, thank you for the question, Ms. Cruz. I think that where there are financial incentives like that, it is because there's an interest from a public health standpoint in providing incentives to get people there. I think in this case, the employment is the incentive. So I think the other part of that is, if we were going to provide $50 for people to get vaccines, we would need to go back to every employee who has already been vaccinated, I would think, and give everyone the $50. I having a hard time doing the math in my head right now, but with 400 employees and a number of volunteers, that's a pretty big chunk of money. And I'm not sure the real benefit of the incentive. I mean, yeah.
No, thank you for that response, Hugh. But Miss Ellis?
Yes, thank you. I have two things, and I'm sorry, I'm at home and I can't stay long. I'm on my way to a wake. My question for clarification for the proof of the vaccine are the little cards that those who have been vaccinated should bring in, and a copy is made and that's put in their record. Is that what we're, and if the person doesn't have that, if they lost that little card, because there was no clear, at the time I took the shot, there was no clear statements about what the card was. It was like, oh, here's the card. Now I had enough sense to keep it. But so from what I understand, we will help those employees who may not have that card get that card. Am I understanding that correct, number one?
So I think that I'm going to ask Mr. Roundtree to comment on this, but I believe if someone has lost the card, I think that the record would still be in a state database. And this may actually be a question for Dr. Kalyana Raman. I believe that we can find proof of vaccination that way as well, I think.
So let me jump in and say that yes, so anybody can download their vaccine record from the state. It's called My IR immunization record. The link is on the Anne Arundel County Department of Health website. And so if you lost your card, you can go there. You can download an electronic copy. I actually have one of for myself on my phone. And if you're having trouble downloading that, you can certainly call the health department or helpline, and we could help you get that record as well.
Okay, that is wonderful. If we can make sure that information is available to all of the employees and volunteers so they don't have to ask, I would feel much more comfortable with that, and making sure people know what is being done with that record, if that is possible. And my second comment is with the employees, because I'm going back to school. I want to know, I don't want the employees to be in a situation where they're fighting with patrons about putting their mask on. So I want to make sure whatever we do is non-confrontational, that employees are not putting themselves in harm's way. Whatever the policy is, maybe just have it posted, because people are still very sensitive about this. So I was also concerned about that policy as well.
So I think that it would be good for Ms. Hollerback to speak to that question, because it is all the public service staff who are the ones that they get into these confrontations. Before she speaks, I would just say that our staff have high level and frequent training on on dealing with difficult customer situations. So they work very well with the public. They deal with things all the time, and sometimes they escalate to the point where we have to call the police. Sometimes they escalate, maybe not quite that much, where we bring in a supervisor or another staff member, but we have a lot of understanding of how to de-escalate situations. But on a mask policy like this, it's like I was saying at the beginning, we anticipate a lot of difficult situations. Ms. Hollerback can really speak to it, though.
Ms. Hollaback, would you like to comment?
Thank you.
And then I see you, Ms. Smith. I haven't forgotten about you.
I don't have too much to add, just that PR very quickly made signs for the front doors, so it will be very clearly marked. And the managers are already pulling out their signs from the, when we did this before, they have decals for the front windows. They have lots of reminders throughout the branch. We do have lots of experience de-escalating difficult situations, so I know they will be calling on that and supporting each other. Skip has told the staff, though, that we do feel this is really important. It is a public health situation, so we will strictly enforce it. So we give a warning, we explain it has to be up over their nose, we explain that this is our policy, and then we see it again, then we say to them, if you do not comply, you will be asked to leave. And if they don't comply, we will call for assistance from the police. We don't want to have to do that, so we do try to solve the problem first. And I ask the staff to work together on that so no one feels vulnerable. But they call in their training for that, but we will call for assistance if someone gets really unruly, and we have had to do that a few times in the past. Hopefully it won't be as bad this time. They're a little bit more used to wearing their masks, but I am a little bit concerned about people saying, I got the vaccine, why are you asking me to do this? But we'll see. We're trying to think positive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Ms. Smith.
Two things. When we started all this, the library had librarians at the door who handed out some masks to people who didn't have them. And that's before they ever get in there to be a problem. So I don't know if we can afford to do that again, but that seems proactive. Of course, that doesn't guarantee they'll keep it on once they're in there, but at least we've started them off with the idea that we're serious about wearing masks. And they were so nice. I don't see how people could resist them, but they might. But that's being proactive. We're at the door, we have masks. You're not wearing one here. You have a mask because we can't allow you in without one.
I can speak to that. We still have masks to give out. The county has been wonderfully generous in supplying us with masks and PPE, and we've been giving out masks the entire time. Not every county has been that well supported, so I really appreciate that. Dr. Kalyana, they've been wonderful, so that's been great. We also got a huge donation from Safeway in Pasadena of a whole lot of their overflow PPE. So we have really cute masks for kids. We have all kinds of things that we can give out. So we will have those right at the door. We let them take extras home for their family. So we will be approaching it that way for sure. And that's been really helpful.
And that's a friendly way of trying to get everybody in one. I'm sure there will still be resistant people, but at least from the time they walk to the door, they know that our county policy is masks, and here is one.
Right.
My second comment was that I don't think we can put any kind of date on it because we do not know how many variants we're going to end up with. We don't know when this might be taken care of. So I don't think we need to put a date in. We can't. All we can say is when it becomes apparent that the crisis is over. I don't think we have to add anything.
Thank you for those two comments.
Pardon, Mr. Shorter.
Yes.
Just wanted to interject really quick. It looks like Mr. Estep mentioned in the comments in the chat, talking about FEMA vaccinations and where they might sort of lie in things. I don't know if you'd like to clarify further, but I did want to acknowledge for the record that he had made a question.
Well, I received a FEMA vaccination, not one from the state of Maryland. So I was just wondering if that's also easily accessible. Thanks.
I think that's a Dr. Kalyana question.
assuming it was done in Maryland. It should be in our system, but I don't actually know the answer to that. So if somebody is in that position, we'd be happy to help sort out how to get a record of that if they don't have their card.
Thank you. And also I'd like to comment in the chat. Mr. Roundtree commented on Mrs. Cruz's idea about adding an incentive, and it would cost over $20,000. I don't know if you would like to elaborate further, Mr. Roundtree or Mr. Grant, our CFO. So I would give you that opportunity right now, if you would like to elaborate on that.
That was just the simple math of offering every employee that we have that's on our payroll a $50 incentive to get vaccinated.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Roundtree. So with that, are there any other points of discussion?
Yeah, I have one.
I've got to, excuse me, my hand's been up for some time. I don't know if you guys.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's my
Me
fault.
too.
Mr.
No, mine was up
We'll
before
go
you, I
with
think.
the second vice chair, then we'll go to you, Mr. Starr,
Thank
just
you.
to give everyone a chance to talk.
Yeah, I think the point to have some language in this that indicates that this will be revisited. It doesn't have to be a date. But what we want to say is, especially to people who are critical about this or who are just looking for a bone to pick, if we include a sentence or two that indicates that the board will revisit this as conditions change or something like that, that indicate we're going to be proactive in monitoring public health, the risk to our patrons and our staff. And when it is reasonable and possible for us to remove this, we are we're anxious to do that, as opposed to just kind of letting it hang.
Point well taken. If possible, Dr. Sapp, can we do that once we're about to vote on it, so we can add it as an amendment, so we can get through all conversation now?
Please, yeah, I need to get.
Okay, we're trying to keep life simple a little bit. Mr. Starr.
All right, I was thinking the same lines as Mr. Sapp. We put a footnote, in this letter, that when the time comes, when this virus dies out, to have a little footnote in there that the board would rescind this requirement.
Okay.
Footnote, a little footnote in this.
No,
Noted.
thank you for bringing that. We will address that once we're done discussion, so we can everyone can keep track on how we're voting on this policy.
So I was
Is there
thinking
any-
the same line as Rob.
Okay, thank you. Miss Solomon, I see that you're unmuted. Did you want to comment, or did you? I just want to make sure I get to everybody. I'm trying to go.
Well, my feeling has been, since this emergency meeting was called, I think we have a fiduciary responsibility. And as far as I'm concerned, I think the next in line is our health responsibility to the general public, since, there are some things that we have to consider protecting. And if we're going to protect our money, I sure hope we're going to protect everyone's health.
Thank you for your comments, Miss Maxwell.
I just wanted to say that we're adopting this policy to be in alignment with the county. Wouldn't you know?
You're a popular
And I think
person, Miss Maxwell.
I think that terminating this policy will only follow once the county has made the decision for it to terminate it.
Okay. So are there any other points of discussion or any other questions? Hearing none, this is what we're going to do. We're going to move briefly to amend any amendments. And it sounds like Dr. Sapp has offered one. What I would recommend to the board is, Ms. Maxwell, can you please mute? Thank you. You're muted, Ms. Maxwell. Thank you. if possible, can we add it in the board resolution? I will rather add it there than in the attached policy, because I think that should stay clean how it is. And we can add a resolve line if everyone has in their in front of them. There's one resolve. We'll add a second one saying resolve that the Board of Trustees of the library will continuously review this policy for will continue to monitor and review the necessity of this policy. If anyone has any other language, please tell me now, because we have to get it right to know what we're voting on. But it sounds like that's the spirit of what Dr. Sapp was trying to get at.
I think that's fine. I mean, there are going to be people that are going to be looking for something like this, and we're talking about placating, because we're going to do this no matter what. But this way, if we put the language in, it may mitigate some of the criticism or sharp words that we hear in the branches even. And it may also it may also empower the staff, who are always near and dear to my heart, to say, well, look, the board has agreed to monitor this, and as soon as they are able, and perhaps in conjunction with county policy, we'll end this. But for now, this is what we have to do to protect public health.
Can I just add one piece, and the good doctor can correct me if I'm wrong. I work at the hospital. I'm the medical librarian at Anne Arundel Medical Center. And Mary Clance, who is our infectious disease doctor, she's my Dr. Fauci when I have a question. She seems to think that this is going to be with us in some form, just like the flu every year, and that they're going to build a vaccine that incorporates this so that it would be something that will booster our immunity against COVID and flu together or whatever. So I don't know if Dr. Kalyarama would want to speak to that, but I don't think it's going away necessarily. I think it's going to take some form and be part of our life for a while. Maybe not as drastic with the vaccinations and whatnot, but maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, no, Dr. Clance is right. I know her well. And this virus will be with us, and probably we're looking at something along the lines of what we do with the flu shot, which is the reason it's a yearly flu shot is that it's actually updated every year based on new variants. So what COVID is doing with variants is what all viruses do. We're just talking about it in a way that we almost never do otherwise. So all the talk of boosters, is really tied into that idea that we're going to need updates probably annually.
Thank you. And Dr. Kalyarama, does the current county policy that was adopted by the county executive, does it provide for any exemptions or anything that we should be aware about?
It's still under development right now, so it's not finalized yet. Typically, I'll speak a little bit broadly. The exemptions are usually in the context of a vaccine requirement without a testing option. But I can't speak as to the final version of the policy yet because it hasn't been written yet.
Okay. No, I just wanted to put that out there for everyone's context. Mr. Alden?
Yes, I liked the language that Dr. Sapp came up with. From my point of view, I think it would be good to have that added as a final paragraph in the actual policy rather than being in the resolution. The language was the Board of Trustees will continuously monitor and review the necessity of this policy.
The reason why we said the resolution, because the resolution provides the context for the policy, because once we resend it, we'll resend that policy altogether. But we can add it there. I just think it's more appropriate that we add it in the resolution because it carries the same weight and it keeps it cleaner.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or concerns? Hearing none, we will vote on it as amended. Not as amended, I'm sorry, we'll take up the amendment first. So if everyone is all right, and I'm just confirming with you, Dr. Sapp, and you, Mr. Auld, that we added to the resolution that line as an amendment. Is that all right? I just want to confirm that we're all on the same page.
It's fine with me.
Okay. With that, I will hear a motion on the amendment that Dr. Sapp offered.
So moved.
Mr. Sapp moves. Is there a second on
I'll second it.
the amendment? Dr. Sapp.
Star seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Starr seconds. All those in favor on the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Now, on the resolution and thus the policy as adopted, are there any other points of discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And it's really important, if you're on a call, to unmute yourself so we can record your voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The resolution and the policy carries. I just want to thank everyone for jumping on the call again. I cannot thank Mr. Auld enough for all of his hard work on this. He has definitely put in overtime this past weekend. His Monday actually started on Friday. So him and his team, we really appreciate all the weekend meetings and keeping us up. As I like to say, me and Mr. Auld has become very close phone friends over the weekend with the amount of updates that we're going back and forth. And of course, we really want to thank our own Dr. Kalyana Raman for being able to join us on such short notice and providing your professional expertise and guiding and helping us to guide this critical decision. So thank you guys very much. And I'm sure the favorite part of the meeting that we all look forward to is adjournment. So I will now hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
So moved.
Second.
And there's a second. We stand adjourned. Thank you guys very much.